Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is a companion video. What are companion videos? Well, I'm awfully glad that you asked. To see, every day on the John Campea Show, Monday through Friday, we save time to take live questions, but we often don't have time to get around to all the live questions that come in. But I want to make sure those questions get answered in a video, so I gather them up and we address them here in companion videos. Now, it is Monday, July the 8th, and I actually had to cut today's show, the John Campea Show, a little bit short earlier today. I was starting to experience a little bit of a technical problem, so I had to get out. But don't worry, guys. All those questions that came in, we're going to get them addressed, and we're going to get started getting caught up on those right now. So let's get things going here. The first one we're going to start getting caught up on comes to us from Vault of the Future, who writes, I just saw the Secret Obsession trailer, the one with the woman waking up and her husband, spoils the main twist of the film. We don't know that. Maybe. How much power do trailer houses have, and why don't directors have a say? Well, first of all, I always tell this to people. When you think a major, unless it's a pre-existing book, and I don't know if Secret Obsession is a pre-existing book, and maybe you know the story already, I don't know. I'm just for now going to go on the assumption that it's an original film, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, whatever. A lot of times people say something happens in a trailer, it's like, that gave everything away. 70-80% of the time, though, it didn't give everything away. And once we see the movie, we realize, oh, that didn't give everything away. The trailer didn't give everything away. So I'm never going to assume that the trailer is giving away the major plot. I got a feeling something else comes along. I mean, look, Double Indemnity. We saw that, and we had to know in the marketing, because it's part of the story that we need to understand going in, that it's a woman who was convicted of murdering her lousy husband. Only years later, she finds out her husband faked his own death and framed her for the murder, and now she's planning on murdering him again. That's the basic premise of the movie, so you have to give it away. For all I know with Secret Obsession, the stuff they showed in the trailer is essential to the basic premise that we need to understand going in. Maybe not. Maybe they completely blew it and they did spoil everything, but we won't know until we saw the movie. The trailer houses have tons of power, but the studio has to give final approval. The studio gives final, because after all, the studio's the client, right? The trailer houses work for the studios. They do what the studio tells them. So if the studio wasn't okay with what got put in a trailer, then the trailer houses have to pull it. Why don't the directors have a say? Because they don't know anything about marketing. That's just it. Directing a movie and being a direct-to-consumer marketing expert are two completely different things. Directors don't know marketing. I've had several directors in this town often tell me, I don't know the first thing about marketing. If I marketed my own movies, nobody would see them. I mean, this is what directors know. There are very, very, very few exceptions to that. And very, very few exceptions where a studio will allow a director to have input on the marketing, but it's very rare. It's very rare. One of the things that I brought up before was Lucky Logan, which I thought was great. Channing Tatum, Channing Tatum. Why am I forgetting that? Daniel Craig, on and on. Great cast, wonderful, fun movie. They let the director run the marketing, and it was a badly marketed film. It was a badly marketed film. As a result, it made about half the money that I think it had the potential of making. But studios don't let directors have a say in the marketing because directors know nothing about marketing. So it's like, let's say you're a chef, right? Are you going to let the interior designer of the house come in and tell you how to make your food? No, because they're an interior designer. They're great at their job, but your job is totally different, you know? And for the most part, that's why. So the studios get the final say. It's not like the trailer houses have all the power and they have all the say. They don't. The studio has to approve it. And most of the time, there are exceptions, they don't let the directors have a say in the marketing because the directors don't know the first thing about marketing. And the directors don't really care how many people come out and see the movie. They care, but they don't care nearly as much as the studio does. And the studio's job is to get as many people out to the movies as possible because it's their money they spent on making it. Wasn't the director who paid for the movie, wasn't the director's money that made the movie, it was the studio's money. So therefore they have final say and they want to do what is best for the movie to get as many people out to it as possible. Sometimes that's, well, 95% of the time that's good. Sometimes that's bad, but it is the way it is. And that's why they don't give directors a say, because most directors understand they don't know the first thing about marketing. All right. Kevin Lewis writes, saw Far From Home in theaters with waiters, recliners, and booze. Well, I don't drink, so the booze thing doesn't help me, but I do love dine-in theaters, particularly AMC dine-in theaters. And in LA, we've got this thing called an iPic theater. That's the same way. It's a great viewing experience. And I know what you're thinking. It sounds like it would be very distracting for the movie to have waiters and food coming in and out. Believe me, I was shocked to find out it's really not. I've eaten in dine-in theaters before, whether it's an AMC dine-in or an iPick, a number of times, and it's never been a negative issue. Now, other people may have different experiences, and I respect that, but for me, it's always been great. Cameron Ross writes, saw Spider-Man Far From Home, and it was great, and I realized the school mascot is a tiger. Could be a chance for MJ to call Peter Tiger like in the comics. It's a bit of a stretch. That's a bit of a stretch. First of all, they don't need a lead-in or an excuse for a girlfriend to call her boyfriend Tiger. You can make up any term of endearment you want. So it's not like they needed to have an excuse. It's like, it would just not make any sense if, she called him Tiger at one point. Oh no, what are we going to do? Of course they could. So I don't know that there's anything to that. But then again, this is the MCU, so I wouldn't put anything by them. Maybe it would be. But again, I don't see them needing to have her call him Tiger. And even if they want her to call him Tiger, they don't need an excuse like having a mascot of the school. So I don't know. It's a good observation, Cameron, but I'm going to disagree with you on that for now, at least. But who knows? Let's see where they go with it. All right, Haskell420 writes, John, please check your Twitter for my God of War tweet with 2 pics of Triple H as Kratos. I know his acting is decent, but my God, Triple H is Kratos. No, he can't act. That's the problem. Triple H cannot act. I love Triple H. He is one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. One of my absolute all-time favorite wrestlers. Only 2 or 3 guys I have ahead of him. I love Triple H. But I've seen him try to act. He cannot act. He cannot lead a film. Do not give him the lead in God of War. Dear God, as much as I love Triple H, do not let Paul be the lead in a God of War movie. He cannot carry a film. It would be a disaster. I don't care if he looks like him. That's nothing. Him looking like it, movie fans, we way over exaggerate the importance of get an actor who looks like the character. That's so unimportant. It really is. At the end of the day, it's really not all that important. Because Hugh Jackman looked nothing like Wolverine, but he's great as Wolverine. And that's why it works. And we've seen characters look just like the person, and it's just not be a good movie, and the actor wasn't good in it. It doesn't matter all that much. It's got to be a secondary concern. Get somebody who can act. That's the main concern. And as much as I love Triple H, dude can just not act. I love him still. I'm a big fan, but he can't act. Royce Freeman writes, I found another instance of a reboot franchise with bringing back somebody. Judi Dench's M. Let me finish reading your comment. Dame Judi Dench as M in Casino Royale, even though it's a younger Bond. Bond is a different thing, though, right? Bond is a different thing. It is always in continuity, and it is always rebooted. It's that exception. It's not really either. So that's why I would never really count, for instance, Sean Connery. Right? He came back for another studio's rendition of Bond that doesn't really count as a Bond film. You could say that, but it's not really. Bond is always in continuity, yet always rebooted. I know that sounds like a contradiction, and it is. It is yet nonetheless what Bond is. So I don't know that I would count that. It's a good observation, Royce. Good observation. But I don't count those because Bond is just a horse of a different color, if you get my meaning on that. All right. At least to me it is. All right, Jacob Jansen writes, John, do you think fighting in hockey should banned, probably you mean be banned, or do you think it's tradition that fighting is allowed in hockey? I think, no, fighting is not allowed. Okay, that's a misnomer. Fighting is not allowed in hockey. If you fight, you get a penalty. Just like tripping is not allowed in hockey. If you trip somebody, you get a penalty. Elbowing is not allowed in hockey. If you elbow somebody, you get a penalty. Slashing is not allowed in hockey. If you slash, you get a penalty. Throwing the puck up over the boards just to kill time or to get a stoppage in play isn't allowed. If you do that, you get a penalty. Fighting is not allowed. If you do it, you get a penalty. Should you, though, outright ban it, that if you get it, you're immediately ejected out of the league? No. There have been some studies done that basically kind of prove the more you crack down on fighting, no one's ever gotten major serious injuries from fighting in the NHL. And think about how many thousands of fights there have been over decades and decades and decades of the league. But there was a study done And it showed that the less fighting there was, the more other major infractions happened. People taking it out on each other in sneaky ways, high sticks, things like that, things that can seriously injure another player. Those incidents go up. Fighting in hockey is a tradition. It's part of the game. You should continue to penalize it, maybe even increase the penalties for it. But no, do not legislate out fighting and just make it, automatically a fight is a suspension. No, it's part of the game. It keeps the game. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. As a lifelong, believe me, ask a Canadian. Fighting actually protects the players more than anything else. The only reason Wayne Gretzky was able to have a long, healthy career was because the Edmonton Oilers had Dave Semenko. Because a lot of teams would be tempted to hey, just take a shot at Gretzky's legs. Then he can't play the rest of the series. Guess what? Anybody in the NHL ever took a run at Gretzky, you know what would happen? Everybody knew what would happen. Dave Cementhead Semenko would come off the bench. And he didn't come off the bench much. But the moment somebody so much as looked at Wayne Gretzky badly, here came Dave Semenko, and everybody knew what was about to happen. Semenko was about to lay the smackdown on whatever fool looked at Gretzky the wrong way. And so nobody could be dirty with Gretzky. Nobody took cheap shots at Gretzky. It's actually something that I believe protects the players, protects the stars, and protects the game. A lot of other people see it differently. What can I say? I'm more of a traditionalist that way. All right. Royce Freeman writes, let's see. Sean Connery came... Speaking of which, I just referred to this. Sean Connery came back for Never Say Never Again, which was kind of a reboot Bond, which because it was not made by the official Bond team is not technically speaking part of the Bond franchise, but it is, but it isn't, but all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that actually, I believe, proves my point. It's just that Bond is a horse of a different color. We look at it a little bit differently, but great minds think alike, Royce. All right. Eric Wells writes, John, Stranger Things Season 3 won my heart. Funny enough, I won all-state speech in high school with my performance of the never-ending story scene where Atreyu meets Morg the werewolf. Spoiler discussion? No, I don't think I'm going to have a spoiler discussion for Stranger Things 3. I just, too many, because it's one of those series where people may not watch it for another month or two, so probably no. Not going to do spoiler discussion on it. But I thoroughly enjoyed Stranger Things Season 3. It's hard for me to evaluate so soon after, but honestly, I think I enjoyed it more than any of the other seasons. And I quite like Season 1, and I quite like Season 2, but yeah, there was something deliciously cheesy about Season 3 as well with the Ruskies and everything, but I liked it a lot, and I adored it, but no, I don't think I'm going to be doing a spoiler discussion on it. All right, Alan Gonzalez writes, do you like comedians like George Carlin? Well, what do you mean like George Carlin? Let's just stick with, do I like George Carlin? I did. I very much enjoyed the comedy of George Carlin. He was a really funny dude. I don't get likes writes, Marvel played it safe not to include Oscorp in Far From Home. Make it Oscorp, which Sony could pull out of the MCU, or make it the Baxter Building where it'll stay. Well, I don't know that it was smart of Marvel not to include. They may not have been allowed to use it. Everybody forgets. People just assume that, because Spider-Man's there, that means Marvel can use whatever Spider-Man characters they want. No, they can't. Sony has to allow it. And if Sony has plans for Oscorp and Norman or whatever in the Sonyverse, then that's where they're going to use them. So it may or may not have been Marvel's decision to use or not to use Oscorp. The Sony may not just simply not have given them permission to do it. So you got to keep that in mind too. What you're saying makes perfect sense. Absolutely. I'm just saying on top of all that, you got to keep in mind that it's not Marvel's decision. It's Sony's decision. And you got to keep that in mind because that's an important factor here. All right. Nicholas Stanley writes, what are your thoughts on Goonies and do you want to see a possible reboot? I love Goonies. I just love it. I grew up watching that movie. I adore that movie. I love that movie. Do I want to see a reboot? I don't know that I'm actively wanting to see a reboot, but if you guys have watched me for any period of time, I have no problems with reboots. Reboot everything. I don't care. If it's good, yay, we get another good movie to celebrate. If it's bad, oh well, I still got the original. There's literally no downside to doing a reboot. None. There is no downside at all. Too many people act like, oh my gosh, if they do a reboot of one of my favorite movies, then they're going to sneak into my house in the middle of the night and steal my Blu-ray or my DVD of the original. No, they won't. The original will still be there. The original's still there. You know, it'll still be there to love and adore and cherish love and adore and cherish as much as anything. There is absolutely zero downside. Then some people try to say, well, John, if you do a remake, then that'll turn people off from seeing the original. Actually, there have been several studies done that prove that when a remake comes out, viewership or interest and attention and buzz of the originals go up. Nobody watched. I remember this one show we were talking about. The Infernal Affairs was never watched more until after The Departed came out. That just drew people's attention to Infernal Affairs because that happened. And that's been proven over and over and over and over again. So there is no downside. So am I actively looking for a Goonies reboot? No. Would I have a problem with a Goonies reboot? Absolutely not. Go ahead and reboot, make it all you want. It's perfectly fine because there's just no downside. Ryan Lohner writes, green Zoe Saldana to blue Zoe Saldana on your left. Says who? It's still behind by about $15 million. It may do it. It may do it. Avengers Endgame may catch Avatar. But as of right now, it's not looking good. They did their whole, re-release fake thing, stunt. They pulled their whole re-release stunt and they're still 15 million behind. I just don't know. Unless something exceptional happens, I think it's unlikely. Still possible. Don't misquote me. It's still possible. But it's still got a lot of work to do. It's still got a lot of work to do. Let's see here. Eric Green writes, do you think Darcy Montgomery, Bill from Stranger Things, would make a good Wolverine should Marvel recast? Again, same answer as every time. Should X actor be an X role? I don't care. I don't care. I really don't care. The only thing I am ever going to ask is the actor a decent actor? And if the actor's a good actor, then I'm up for it. The kid who played Billy in Stranger Things, him playing Wolverine, okay, I think he's a decent little actor, so sure, I'm up for it. But I'd also be up for 500 other guys. So that's the best answer I can give on that, Eric. But I did like him in Stranger Things. I liked him quite a bit in that. I thought he was really good, actually, in this one. Even better than he was in season 2, as a matter of fact. I liked him a lot. John Sava writes, your show was on... Oh, I heard about this. Your show was on the BBC News when the earthquake... Yeah, so the other day, I got a whole bunch of people... sent me a message in social media from the UK saying, John, you're on BBC News. So I guess they took the clip of when the earthquake hit. Remember, we were doing the show live when the earthquake hit. And I guess that got played on BBC News. So thank you to everybody who let me know about it. And thank you to you, John, as well. All right. Beto Robles writes, Adele, Skyfall, Smith, Spectre. For the new movie, who do you guys want to do the song for Bond 25? I want Jennifer Hudson with that powerful range. With all sincerity, I don't care. I really don't care. It's not going to make the movie any better or any worse. Don't get me wrong, there are Bond songs that I love, but they don't make the movie better, and they don't make the movie worse when they're bad songs either. The movie's the movie. To me, the song is something that lives outside of the movie. So I honestly have zero opinion, and I really give zero shits about it. I just don't care at all. It's a completely irrelevant thing to me that just becomes a trivia question in the future. Now, Jennifer Hudson is one hell of a singer. So if they announce tomorrow that Jennifer Hudson is doing the song, great, because she's a great singer. I'd love to hear it. But there are a lot of other great singers as well. But yeah, for that, I just really don't care. Frypan90 writes, although Robert might have had an opinion because he loves James Bond movies. But yeah, for me, I just don't care. Frypan90 writes, hey, John. Is it just me, or is Far From Home more of a sequel for Endgame and not so much for Homecoming? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Cheers. I'm going to disagree with you. I mean, it is a movie that definitely picks up after the events of Endgame, no doubt. But if this was really more of a sequel to Endgame, we would be seeing where Scarlet Witch is. If it was really more of a sequel to Endgame, we would see what Captain Marvel is now doing in the universe. If it was truly a sequel to Endgame, we would follow up with, okay, now what's Cap doing in his retirement years? If it was really a sequel to Endgame, what happens after Cap gives the shield to Sam? If it was really a sequel to Endgame, we'd find out with his arm injury and everything, what's Dr. Banner up to now? If it was really a sequel to Endgame, there were many other things that would have needed to happen for me to say, this is more of a sequel to Endgame. No, this is a sequel to Homecoming. That's definitely placed in the continuity of the next film after Endgame, no doubt. But character-wise, emphasis, storyline, the whole bit, this is a sequel to Homecoming. 100% it's a sequel to Homecoming. There's just too many other things. Like, if you had 100 different factors, about 91 of them lean towards the fact of it being a Homecoming thing, with just a few handful of factors maybe suggesting it's definitely in the continuity of Endgame. It's definitely the next story that came after Endgame. But when you really weigh it all out, it's a Homecoming thing. And I think that's the right move, because it's Spider-Man. It's not MCU Part 23. It's Spider-Man Far From Home. Make Spider-Man the emphasis, make his story and his secondary characters and all that kind of stuff. I mean, really, there was only one character in Endgame that was in Spider-Man Far From Home, and that was Spider-Man. Ned wasn't there. I mean, if you're not going to count the very end when the unsnapping happens, if you're not going to count all that, but for the movie, MJ's not a part of Endgame. Peter's teachers are not a part of Endgame. Aunt May is not in Endgame. Until, again, just the very, very end, Nick Fury is not in Endgame. His other fellow students, not in Endgame. So yeah, I could see where you're coming from, and I could see what would spark the thought. But I think when you really sit down and look at all the factors, there's really not much of a way to look at at Homecoming being a sequel to Endgame. It really is a sequel to Far From Home, in my opinion. You guys may say it differently, and that's cool. But in my opinion, that's kind of how I see it. Good thought, though, man. All right, BMC writes, God of War, most video games actually, translate better as a TV series. I disagree. Allows for better character development, in-depth storytelling. Thoughts? I disagree. For the most part. That doesn't mean there aren't exceptions. That doesn't mean, I don't think there's any way to say across the board, all video games would be better as movies instead of TV shows, nor do I think, can you say the opposite. I am of a mindset that done right, it plays better as a movie. And that's just the way I see it. Honestly, any story, considering that most translations don't stay like 100% true to the game or 100% true to the comic or 100% true to the book, whatever you're adapting from, you can really develop it however you want. You can develop it as a series if you want, or you can develop it as a movie as you want. I don't think they're inherently lean one way or the other. But to me, I like the episodic one-shot kind of feel of it more than anything else. So I lean much more towards movies, with some exceptions, definitely with some exceptions. But yeah, that's how I feel about it. I'll be honest with you, BMC. I'm not saying you're doing this, not at all. I think a lot of people have used that as an excuse for why video games just haven't translated well on the screen. They go, oh, then TV is the answer. Hey, if it doesn't translate well in a movie, it probably won't translate well as a TV show either. But yeah, again, I think there are exceptions. I think there are some that maybe the television route may be better. Maybe if you adapt it a certain way, it could work better that way. My default position would still be movies. But hey, that's just an opinion. Your opinion is different than mine, obviously, and your opinion is no less valid than mine. So who knows? We'll have to wait and see. All right, Patrick Conway writes, the Avengers ripped aliens and gods apart. Still PG-13. Yeah, I think there's a lot people could get away with. Like, for instance, I was saying earlier today that I believe when you look at God of War, the game that won Game of the Year, the most recent game, I believe you can do that movie properly and it still be PG-13. I think you can do a lot of mythological creature violence and still get a PG-13. Now, some people then objected and said, well, John, you clearly don't know God of War 3. Well, that's not what we're talking about. I think it's pretty clear if they did a God of War movie, they're talking about this recent incarnation. I don't think they're talking about the whole mythology of it. At least that's how I interpreted Stephen DeKnight's term. I could be wrong, but I'm just saying that's how I interpreted it. Yes, if you look at the whole God of War thing in its entirety, it'd be hard not to go R. But with this particular game, the one that won Game of the Year, I think you could do it properly and still get a PG-13 without compromising anything. Because again, I think the MPAA is very, very lenient on even brutal violence when it's not done against human beings. When it's done against either robots or aliens or mythological creatures, they give a lot more leeway, a hell of a lot more leeway. So yeah, I'm not saying I would rather it be PG-13 instead of rated R. I'm not saying that at all. Not in the least. Don't misquote me. I'm just saying they could do it PG-13, it would be fine. Although I'm like everybody else, I kind of prefer them do rated R. But if they did do it PG-13, I don't really think they'd have to compromise much, to be honest with you. But anyway, that's just my point of view on it. Patrick Conway writes, robbery scene might be a Marvel one-shot, said Watts. Yeah, Robert was actually mentioning that on the show today, that they could be gathering up a couple of the scenes they didn't use and making something like that out of it. So it's a good observation. Israel Martinez sends in a super chat. Thank you, Israel. Ryan Lohner writes, I recall the Bridge to Terabithia crew were really pissed off about the trailer. As a lover of the book, I was too. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier about misleading and deceptive advertising. Disney's Bridge to Terabithia is one of the worst culprits of that in cinematic history. Because it's not like everything that was in the trailer is in the movie, but they put their trailers together in a way to make it look like it was a Lion Witch in the Wardrobe, to make it look like it was a Lord of the Rings, to make it look like it was a Harry Potter. Children discover a magical kingdom in the forest and blah, and have adventures. And that is not what this movie is. It's a great movie, by the way. But that, what I just described, is not this movie. It's not Bridge to Terabithia. And I remember a lot of parents were pissed off, a lot of movie fans. I was pissed off. Because it's like, look, the movie is great. It is, but that is not the movie you told us we were getting. You gave us the impression that this was a fun adventure of children discovering a magic kingdom and, have an adventure together and yay. That was not this movie. It's about a kid who dies and this little child dealing with the fact that his friend unnecessarily and tragically is dead, and now they got to deal with death. And it's a wonderful movie, but a very different movie than what they advertised. It's not the same thing as, something was in the trailer that we don't have in the movie. That's not really a big deal. That's an element. You can still sell the proper movie, giving us a sense of what this movie is and what it's going to be like. Bridge to Terabithia didn't do that. Everything they showed us in the trailer was in the movie, but it was horribly deceptive nonetheless. And you're right, Ryan, there were a lot of people pissed off. All right. Evelyn writes, what do you think will happen with New Mutants? I think it'll come out. Disney, they had time to make up their mind, and Disney set a release date for it, so they're going to put it in theaters. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't at this point, so I think it's going to come out in theaters. Arturo Castro writes, hey, John, just wondering. I know MJ in the MCU is called Michelle Jones, but I was thinking, what if when she grows up to be an actress, her stage name is Mary Jane? Is that a clever way of going about it? No, that's a cop-out. That's a total cop-out. This is not Mary Jane Watson. And you don't need to make her Mary Jane Watson. In this MCU current movie universe, there is no Mary Jane Watson. And that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly okay. They gave Zendaya's character the name MJ as a tribute to the traditional love interest for Spider-Man. That's great, but she's not Mary Jane Watson. And I don't think at some point down the road, they're just going to make her name Mary Jane Watson. They shouldn't do it. It's not just that they don't need to do it. They absolutely shouldn't do it, because that's really butchering what the character of Mary Jane is. Like, this is not Mary Jane Watson. And I love this character. I love Zendaya's MJ. And I think she works great in the movie, and she's got great chemistry with Peter. And I think it's wonderful. And it doesn't need to be Mary Jane, and they shouldn't retcon it at some point to pretend like it is. It's not Mary Jane. They should leave it that way. And I don't think they'll do anything like that. And I think that's the right move. I think that's definitely the right move for them. All right. Let's see here. Brandon Plummer writes, I disagree with Infinity War's marketing compared to Spider-Man. I don't know what you mean by that. I was most excited for Hulk, so it felt like false advertising. Is a difference between cuts and telling me I'm getting something that I'm not. Again, it's a different thing, though. It's a completely different thing. Like Infinity War's trailers gave us a very accurate representation of what this movie was going to be like. It did. It gave us a sense for the tone of the film. It gave us a sense of what the stakes of the film were. It gave us all of that, and it didn't mislead the audience at all. You got exactly the kind of movie we thought we were going to get. Did it have every detail? No, but those are just details. The only thing that we didn't get that we thought, the trailers never made it look like Hulk was a big major character throughout the whole film. Even the misdirect trailers only showed us one scene, the Wakanda battle. Granted, it's a big scene, But that's all they showed us, as a little bit of a misdirect. Now, we can have a debate about whether or not studios should even use misdirects. We can have that debate. It's a worthy debate to have. I'm just saying it is nothing at all like the situation with Mission Impossible 2 or Bridge to Terabithia, where they paint a picture for you to lead you to believe a fundamental thing about the film that is just not the case. Bridge to Terabithia made us think it was a completely different type of movie. Mission Impossible 2 made you think that Anthony Hopkins was in at least half the movie or more, when really he was just in 2 very quick scenes with about 3 minutes of screen time. So yes, it is exactly the same as Spider-Man Far From Home. Hey, Spider-Man Far From Home showed us a scene where Spider-Man was apprehending burglars and talking to the cops, and that's not in the movie. The Infinity War thing showed us scenes where Hulk was participating in the Battle of Wakanda, but he's not. That's not in the movie. It's really the same thing. The only difference here is that you were looking forward to seeing Hulk, but it's just a detail. That's just a detail. As opposed to real deceptive marketing, which tricks us into thinking one thing, that this movie is about one thing, and it's really about something completely different. That, I think, is a fundamental difference, Brandon. That's why I disagree with you, brother. I disagree with you on that. I do think the Infinity War and Spider-Man things are completely identical scenarios, whereas something like real deceptive marketing is something completely different. So we're going to disagree on that. But still, what you're bringing up is still a debate worth having. It's just a different debate than this one. That's how I see it at any rate. Anyway, good observation, man. All right. Brandon Plummer writes, do you think Black Adam will be in Shazam 2? Absolutely. 100%. They did foreshadowing twice for Black Adam with The Rock's likeness, by the way. They did foreshadowing for Black Adam in the Shazam movie. They've already kind of shown that they've got movement now going on the Black Adam movie. I think a Black Adam movie will come first, and then Shazam 2 will have Black Adam in it. They might go the other way around. We'll see. But yeah, I feel, and again, I don't have any insider information on this. I'm just telling you my own speculation as a fan. I feel very confident as a fan that we're going to see Black Adam in Shazam 2. All right, Adam Douglas writes, have you heard anything on if Homecoming or Far From Home will be available on Disney Plus? Streaming distribution rights, I assume, still belong to Sony, not Disney. Exactly. That's the big question right now. From what I understand, that is going to be Sony's decision. Like where they put Spider-Man Far From Home as far as streaming goes, that's Sony's decision because they're the distributor. The distributor is the one who makes that decision and decide what they want to do with that property. So that'll be their call. We'll see what they do. I won't be surprised if, look, just because it's Sony's decision, that doesn't mean they can't choose to put it on Disney streaming. They can if they want. That's their right to do. They can sign a deal with Disney and Disney Plus to stream those movies on Disney Plus, but it's Sony's decision, and I don't know what they've decided to do yet. We'll have to wait and see. The Nerdy Hatter writes, the movie is based off the original Legend of Mulan, not the animated movie. Yeah, that's a point that Chris was making earlier today, that this Mulan movie is not based really so much on the animated movie, but really more on the actual Legend of Mulan. Now, the animated movie was also based on the Legend of Mulan, but this one is really just more directly, it appears to be based on that. So I think Nerdy Hatter, I think you're right on the money with that. I really do. All right. Nico writes, holy F, Christopher Judge as Kratos in a movie. I'm creaming my pants right now. I honestly don't know that he'd be the right choice. I don't know that he'd be the right choice. He does a fantastic job doing the voice in God of War. Of course he does. Can he physically carry a movie like that? I'm not convinced. I'm not saying he can't, but I'm not convinced he could. The only thing I'm really familiar with Christopher Judge in is Stargate SG-1. And I thought he was fine in that. I liked him in that show, but I don't know that he's got the acting range to physically carry a movie, be the lead actor in a movie and carry that film. And I'm not talking crap on him. I'm not saying he can't. I'm just saying I don't have all the confidence in the world that he can. I think if he was a stronger actor who could, he'd probably be getting more work than he does. And again, who knows? Maybe he could be great, but I think that's more sentimentality. I would suggest, and I could be wrong. I'm fully admitting it could be way off. I could be way wrong on this. But I would suggest that thinking Christopher Judge should play the role in the live action movie is really more sentimentality than it is logical thinking. That's just me, and maybe I'm way off on that. I could be way off on that, but that's honestly is my first thought on that when I look at his resume. But that's just me. All right. Matt Brown writes, quote for Chris, I'm sorry, and unfortunately Chris isn't here right now. I'm sorry it has to end this way, brother. No, you're not. That actually sounds familiar to me. Since it's a quote for Chris, it's probably something from like an Airbender or Legend of Korra or something that I'm not as familiar. But even to me, that sounds familiar. I'll have to run it by Chris and see if she recognizes it, Matt. All right, JB Bonifacio writes, Frozen 2 is also going to hit the $1 billion club. I don't know for sure, but I think that's a pretty good bet. I wouldn't bet against it. Like me and Ann and a couple of our friends just went to Disneyland this weekend. And still, the amount of little girls dressed as, I can't remember their names, Anna and something else, the two sisters from Frozen. The amount of little kids that still dress like those characters from Frozen, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And it ain't because Frozen 2 is coming out, it's because those little kids love Frozen. So I mean, I don't know if it's a 100% lock that Frozen 2 is going to make $1 billion, but I'll tell you what, JB, I wouldn't bet against it. I would not bet against it, my friend. All right, Tom Growcut writes, I want to see Kratos versus Thor on the big screen. Well, I mean, that's something that the video game kind of hinted towards. They could, but, well, now, just so you know, that is a video game reference. He's not talking about Thor from the MCU because anybody can do a Thor movie. Seriously. Disney doesn't own the rights to Thor. Thor is basically anybody, it's a public domain character. Anybody can do a Thor thing. What you cannot do is do a Thor thing and borrow things from the Marvel movies. You can't do that. If you're going to do Thor, you can only do things about Thor that are based in the actual mythology of Thor and things that you make up yourself. You cannot borrow any things that Marvel made up about Thor in your movie. So, theoretically speaking, if they did do a God of War movie and then they did a sequel and wanted to bring Thor into it, they absolutely can. They 100% can because he's a public domain character. It won't be the Chris Evans. It won't be the Chris Hemsworth Thor. It absolutely won't be the Chris Evans Thor. It won't be the Chris Hemsworth Thor. It won't be a crossover from the MCU. But you can still have the actual Thor character there if they so choose. Iggy is Horrible writes, big horror fan here. I loved Midsommar. It's beautiful. Rob, go see it. 90%. You'll love it. John, I got you at 70%. Lead actress played Paige in the WWE movie. Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting to know. I know everything about the movie because I had somebody explain the whole movie to me, and I'm still not sure if I want to go. Like, Ann and I almost went to go see it the other day, but we chose to see something else. We'll wait and see. Well, I might I might just walk myself over to the theater there one of these nights and just go see it anyway. Suthius writes, I'm glad to see the cast of the recent Power Rangers getting more roles. Darcy, I don't know how to pronounce that name. Darker in Stranger Things, Naomi in Aladdin, RJ in Black Lightning, and Ludi Lin in Aquaman. Wish the best of them all. Hope to see more. I'll tell you what. I got to meet that cast of Power Rangers, and they were all delightful. Particularly good Canadian kid Ludi Lin. But no, seriously, they were all delightful. They were all totally pleasant and really fun to be around, and I couldn't be happier for them. And I've been really impressed with Naomi Scott. She was so good in Aladdin. So good. And she's the only reason I have any interest in seeing this Charlie's Angels movie, because I'm very curious to see how she follows up Aladdin now. And we'll have to wait and see. But I'm with you, Suthius. It's great seeing them actually moving forward and getting more work and not just disappearing after this one little movie. It's good to see them getting it, and it couldn't happen to a nicer group of people. Really are. They were really, really wonderful to be around. All right. Mr. L writes, how aware are people that Hellboy is from the comics? I think everybody just assumes he's a comic book character. I mean, the average person couldn't tell you where he's from in the comic books, but I think most people would look at Hellboy and say, oh, that must be a comic book character. So I'm guessing pretty high. Iggy is Horrible writes, Avatar 2.88 billion, Avengers 2.77, fans assemble. No, that's bull. look, see that it's that mentality that I think is really poor. I think it's a poor mentality that you should run out and go see it simply to get it to the record. I think doing that makes you have to put an asterisk. It either naturally does it on its own or it doesn't. It either does it on its own or it doesn't. And if you want to go see it 10 more times and you don't think Disney's rich enough and you have to give them another $50, then more power to you. And if you're just somebody like, I just naturally want to go see it a few more times in theaters, then there's nothing wrong with that. But this whole thing about calling on people and rallying people, let's just go out to the theaters just to get it to the record, then that takes away from to me, that takes away from the accomplishment. Forever in my head, like if we ever got some big, massive fan organization to get together and get, 1 million people out to see the movie one more time to push it over to the record, then forever to me, it's always going to have an asterisk beside it. You either do it or you don't. That's the way I see it. Whether it's from getting a re-release later, at least you're doing it on your own merit. Whether it's from the theaters just want to keep it in longer and eventually gets over, then at least it did it on its own. This whole artificial thing, let's artificially get everybody together and go see it when we wouldn't have otherwise, just to artificially inflate the number. Look, I'm all for Endgame getting the record, but I want it to get it on its own. I want it to get it on its own merits. Not with some contrived, fan-organized, come on, everybody, go see the movie again. I just, to me, that belittles it. And it diminishes the accomplishment in my head. And again, to me, maybe the history books won't show, but to me, it'll forever have an asterisk beside it. If it's going to do it, I want to see it do it on its own. And if that means that next year it gets a big, by fan demand, a re-release, more power to it, then great. But that I don't like that mentality. Yeah, I'll be honest. I've never been shy about sharing that opinion. I don't like that mentality. I just think it diminishes it and it takes away from whatever accomplishment it gets. Suthius writes, Feige just confirmed that the snap was the disappearing and the blip was the returning, although he sounded like it's all in hindsight at this point. Yeah, we had this discussion the other day. Honestly, when you watch Spider-Man Far From Home, it just sounds like the entire thing is being referred to by the people of Earth as the blip. It didn't sound like they were just talking about the returning. It sounded like that was their overall definition of the event, the blip. So I don't know. Maybe it is in hindsight. I don't know. But personally, I don't care. I'm never going to refer to it as the blip myself. To me, it's the snap, right? Both the going and the coming back to me is the snap. The people who were lost in the snap, we know they come back. But so I always think of it as a snap anyway, but it sounded to me like in the movie they were referring to it as the blip, but who knows? Who cares? Just semantics I get. I am not going to get worked up over it one way or the other. But thanks for the info, Suthius. All right. Ashura writes, John, I am worried about Mysterio joining the Sinister Six if he faked his death, which I think he did. So using drug like Fury in Winter Soldier, well, here's the thing, Ashura. Number one, I really don't think Sony wants anybody to do Sinister Six. I don't think Sony wants Marvel doing Sinister Six. And if Sony doesn't want them to do it, it doesn't matter what Marvel wants to do. And I don't think Marvel would want to do it either. Like, everybody's ass is still a little bit chapped over the last time they tried to get a Sinister Six going. And you can say, but John, no, it's different. Yeah, it is different. Absolutely it is. But, there's still that bruise. And I don't think there's any need. I think even just the sound of Sinister Six sounds dumb. I mean, and I don't know that they go that route. And oh my God, I hope they don't fake death again. I mean, it is the Marvel fake death universe. That's all they do is fake death everybody. And God, I hope they're not doing it again. Look, to me, they gave Mysterio a great movie. I'm not going to spoil anything. They concluded the character great. I don't want to see them pulling yet another fake death. Don't pull another fake death. Oh God, it would drive me crazy. Anyway, and the final question today, and then we are all caught up, comes us from Jacob Silvers, who writes, did you see the teaser for the Mulan live action movie? It looks awesome. Dude, we talked about it in the show today. Yes, I liked it very much. It was one of our main topics of discussion on the show today, and I agree, Jacob. I thought it looked great. I thought it looked epic in scope. It does look like an awards play by Disney to to do the awards play kind of side of it, kind of the way that it looks like Warner Brothers has taken Joker and making an awards play with it. It just felt like that to me. This Mulan trailer, it felt great. It felt like a 90s Spielbergian kind of film. And I mean that in the best possible way. I thought it looked great. And I don't miss the songs, and I don't miss the dragon or any of that kind of stuff. I think it looks great. So, yeah, I'm really happy with it. I thought it looked wonderful, Jacob. All right, guys. That will do it for today's installment of the companion video. Now all caught up on all the questions that got sent in a little bit earlier. Don't forget, guys, the John Campea Show returns again tomorrow. It's going to be me, Aaron Cummings, and of course, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett will be here. Make sure you guys come back and join us again for that. And sometime in the next 24 to 48 hours, I got to get the Spider-Man spoiler discussion companion video up as well, because I still got a bunch of questions to get through on that. So make sure you guys keep your eyes open for that as well. All right, guys, that will do it for me for now. Thank you so much, guys, for sending in all those questions, not just because you gave us really fun, interesting stuff, where there's stuff I agreed with or disagreed with. That's the fun part. We get to have these discussions, not just because you gave us great things to talk about, but also because you supported the channel while doing it. And I, Robert, Aaron, Chris, Ray, Jonathan, we all thank you very much for supporting the channel on that level as well. All right, guys, that'll do it for now. Thanks a lot for being here. My name is John Campea, and until our next video, bye-bye.